Adventist vegetarian diabetics. Prove all things, hold fast that which is good. Why can't I eat low carb and low fat? Many of you ask, why can't I eat low carb and low fat? The short answer is that low carb and low fat are in relationship to each other, not just a fixed number of grams of carbohydrates or fat. You are defining low carb and low fat as being some specific amount of carbs or fat, not their relationship to each other. As you can see by Dr. Ted Naiman's illustration, you can't have both low carb and low fat because that would create a broken seesaw. Or if you put low carb and low fat on the same side of the seesaw, that would result in a very high protein protocol and possible elevation of blood sugar due to gluconeogenesis. Low carb, high fat, moderate protein, LCHF. The dietary approach to managing diabetes you hear about most often is low carb, high fat, moderate protein, or LCHF for short. It describes a relationship between carbohydrates and fats in your diet. So we'll start with that. This approach is based on current scientific research as well as anecdotal experiences that have shown that diabetes symptoms can be reversed, and blood glucose can be put in the normal non-diabetic range, 4.0 to 5.6% A1C, as long as the patient maintains a low-carb high-fat dietary protocol. The definition of low-carb varies a lot, depending on what source you are consulting, and can be anywhere from 130 grams a day of carbs to 30 grams a day. Adventist vegetarian diabetics considers fewer than 100 grams total carbs per day to be low carb. Fewer than 50 grams total carbs per day to be very low carb. Many of us need to limit carbs to fewer than 30 grams total carbs per day, or fewer than 20 grams total carbs per day. A very low-carb diet typically is one in which the percentage of calories from carbohydrates is 5 to 10%, protein is 15 to 20%, and fat is 70 to 80% of total calories. A typical LCHF diet consists of a protein source, meat, eggs, cheeses, nuts, and seeds, and a foundation of green leafy and cruciferous vegetables and other low-carb vegetables. It almost always omits all grains, legumes, starchy vegetables, and most fruit except for a few berries. Healthy dietary fats are from avocados, olives and olive oil, coconut oil, butter, heavy cream, and cheeses. LCHF may apply to carnivore, clean meat non-vegetarian, pescatarian, lacto-ovo-vegetarian, or dietary vegan lifestyles. Some have said that Dr. Jason Fung defines LCHF as low-carb healthy fat. I like that description. It means that, besides low-carb, however you choose to define it, you eat enough healthy fat to keep you satiated and enough protein to provide necessary nutrients for cell growth and repair, but not so much protein as to cause gluconeogenesis, which can contribute to an elevated blood glucose level. Dr. Fung is clear about stating that diabetes is caused by too much sugar. High carb, low fat, moderate protein. The polar opposite of LCHF would be high carb low fat, HCLF, and is typical of a dietary vegan protocol. Proponents of this protocol typically call it whole food plant-based, WFPB. While this implies dietary vegan, I would like to posit that WFPB can apply to any dietary lifestyle that requires real food, that is, unprocessed foods, as much as possible, and focuses on vegetables as a foundation of nutrients. A high-carb moderate protein low-fat dietary protocol has to be dietary vegan in order to theoretically reverse diabetes. The basic belief for this approach is that diabetes is caused by dietary fat. And, as such, proponents insist that fat should be no more than 30 grams per day and that fats must come from the whole food. Coconut meat is okay, but not coconut oil, not even organic, virgin, unrefined coconut oil. Olives are okay, but not olive oil. They also do not permit any processed foods. There is no limit placed on the amount of carbohydrates. Rice, potatoes, and other starchy vegetables are allowed in any amount as long as they are not processed. There is no limit on legumes. There is no limit on fruits as long as they are a whole food. Fortunately, they do not allow fruit or vegetable juices or dried fruit. One interesting tidbit is that the WFPB proponents say that nuts and seeds should be eaten in small amounts because, otherwise, you'll get too much fat. The proponents of LCHF say that nuts and seeds should be eaten in small amounts because, otherwise, you'll get too much carbohydrate. Low carb plus low fat equals a broken seesaw. It's difficult for many people to accept that fats are okay for diabetics, within whatever individual calorie quota they have established for themselves. We have spent our lifetimes being bombarded by the food, pharmaceutical, and medical industries with the idea that fat is bad and carbs are good. It takes some serious thought and research to come to believe just the opposite. And many of you may never believe that high healthy fats are good for diabetics. Yet you can't deny the proof that high amounts of carbohydrates are detrimental to diabetic health. Low carb, high protein, moderate fat. There are some low carb schools of thought that recommend low carb, high protein, moderate fat. This is what Dr. Richard K. Bernstein recommends, as well as the original Atkins diet. Of course, Dr. Bernstein also recommends a substantial exercise regimen. And if you are doing the amount and types of exercise that require a higher level of protein, that would be appropriate. But if you are not using all your dietary protein for cell growth and repair, you could experience gluconeogenesis. If you don't get nearly as much exercise as you need for general health, I would not consider low-carb high-protein as a viable option. However, if you are convinced that you should eat moderate fat, and, thus, high protein, and if you can do so without raising your blood sugars due to gluconeogenesis, by all means, please do so. Moderate everything. Well, some will say, how about just moderate everything? First, this idea smacks of the terrible advice, everything in moderation. We diabetics would like to think we can eat anything as long as it's in moderation. But that is simply not true. In moderation is extremely vague. Moderation is not a unit of measurement and can mean vastly different things to different people. Maybe it means eat only half of it. Maybe it means eat it only once a week, or month. Maybe it means you can eat as much as you want only if no one is looking. Other reasons that moderate everything is a bad idea are that, in a 2,000-calorie diet, 33% carbs would be way too high for a low-carb protocol, whether high-fat or high-protein. 33% fat would be too much fat for ADA, American Diabetes Association, compliance, and way too much for high-carb low or no-fat dietary vegan. 33% protein would be too low for low-carb high-protein and too high for low-carb high-fat, could result in gluconeogenesis. It is also too high in protein for a high-carb low or no-fat dietary vegan diet. Nope, moderation is not a good idea. High carb plus high fat equals the standard American diet. A diet with high carbs and high fat is typical of the standard American diet, SAD, or junk food. This protocol can be 1. Adventist non-vegetarian, hamburgers and beef hot dogs on buns, breaded fried chicken, French fries, ketchup, pizza, ice cream, donuts, etc. 2. Lacto-ovo-vegetarian, veggie burgers and Big Franks on buns, French fries, ketchup, pizza, ice cream, donuts, etc. 3. Vegan, ketchup, donuts, Oreos, and potato chips. Yes, there is such a thing as a junk food dietary vegan. If you are still eating high carb and high fat, we hope you are at least taking your insulin and/or diabetes meds as prescribed and getting your A1C tested every 3 to 6 months, or as ordered by your doctor. Perhaps, at some point, you will feel empowered to at least follow ADA dietary recommendations, which includes a limit to carbs and, wait for it, portion control. Following ADA guidelines may delay diabetic complications and give you a few more years of life. And if you are okay with that, that's all that matters. Many of you, however, really are focused on reversing your diabetes symptoms and achieving and maintaining normal blood sugars, 4.0 to 5.6% A1C, without diabetes medications and/or insulin. Some of you will do this by eating low carb, with either high fat or high protein, whether you are an Adventist non-vegetarian, lacto-ovo-vegetarian, or dietary vegan. And some few of you may attempt to do this with a high-carb, low or no-fat dietary vegan approach. However, at the time of this writing, we have had no one in our Adventist Vegetarian Diabetics Facebook group who has had success in achieving normal blood glucose and A1C using that approach. Regardless of how you achieve normal blood sugars without medications or insulin, the most successful approaches have these things in common. 1. You eat, or drink, no sugar, in any form. Period. 2. You eat only real foods that are in as close as possible to their natural state. This means almost no processed foods, especially highly refined carbohydrates. No fruit or vegetable juices. No dried fruit. 3. You eat no foods with trans fats, margarine, shortening, or vegetable seed oils that are processed with high heat and chemicals. This includes canola, corn, cottonseed, grapeseed, safflower, soy, and sunflower oil. 4. Most importantly, you will eat to your meter and prove all things, hold fast that which is good. Visit our website at AdventistVegetarianDiabetics.com. Follow our blog at AdventistVegetarianDiabetics.com/blog posts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/AdventistVegetarianDiabetics. Copyright by Adventist Vegetarian Diabetics.